All right, welcome everyone to this month's conversation. It's a special conversation between two of my favorite people, and it is also a year anniversary of our full rebrand and relaunch of the ACJ. And so it's a fitting time to be putting these two incredible folks in conversation. For those who do not know, Steve Naiman is a lifelong ACJ member and was president of the organization for 25 years until this December, and is now President Emeritus. He has spent his whole life living the values of the ACJ and defining his Judaism through it. And Sam Panken is a board member of the ACJ and will be interviewing Steve. Sam grew up in the Reform movement and will basically be taking over from me now. So, Sam, if you would like to begin, this is going to be a great conversation. I'm really excited.
Thank you, Andy. So, since we're speaking across generations from different perspectives, I want to give you all just a little bit of background about where I'm coming from. I grew up very deeply ensconced in Reform Judaism as practiced specifically within the Union for Reform Judaism. My dad, Rabbi Aaron Panken, was a Reform rabbi and the president of Hebrew Union College Jewish Institute of Religion. And my mom was and is a very active lay leader in Jewish life. Various other family members are also involved in URJ leadership and the Reform Rabbinate. I attended a URJ summer camp, a URJ Teen Israel program, and a URJ synagogue, all of which unilaterally espoused Zionism and supported the state of Israel. I learned my Jewish values in Reform contexts, and I learned that Jews value questions, generative disagreements, and thoughtful debate. And I found it strange throughout my upbringing that there always seemed to be one question we couldn't ask. I grew older and became more keenly aware of the forces of colonialism and supremacy at play, and I began to question Zionism and to disentangle my understanding of my own Judaism from the oppressive Zionist project. And this is all despite strong socialist, anti-Zionist politics among earlier generations of my ancestors, including the socialist judge Jacob Panken, who was actually a member of the ACJ. So the ACJ is part of my history, and I didn't even know it until I recently became involved. I was never presented with the opportunity to consider a Judaism without Zionism in my Jewish life growing up, and it's something that I came to more recently on my own. Um, I grew up in a world where Zionism and Judaism were really presented as one. Steve grew up in a world where that false equivalency was one his community was actively refusing. And here we are, we get to work together, and I'm very happy to be talking with Steve so we can learn a little more about how exactly we all got here. So, Steve, will you please tell us a little bit about who you are and about your family's connection to the ACJ?
Sure. I'm honored to be here, and I have a caveat that I would like to begin with that I'm not an intellectual, an academic, a historian, or a theologian, and any views that I offer are strictly my personal observations. And I'm President Emeritus of the Council, so I certainly don't speak for the Council on anything that I say. I'm going to name some people as we go along, and all of them will be people that are deceased. I won't. I'll try not to name anybody that might prefer not to be named. I was. So I'll start with a little history. I was raised in Houston, Texas, and I was born in 1947. My mother was raised conservative, so I'm a product of a mixed marriage, and my father was a classical Reformed Jew. My mother's parents came from Poland in the early 1900s, and my grandfather became the gabbai of the largest conservative congregation in Houston, and it might actually be in the United States, a very large conservative congregation. My father's parents were born in Texas, and their parents had been in the United States for probably 10 or 15 years before they were born. So I guess 2.5 generations of American. Uh, we belong to Congregation Beth Israel in Houston, Texas. And my father's father, had been the president of that congregation. And he had also been the president of the Jewish Family Services. Congregation Beth Israel was known as an anti-Zionist congregation. Its rabbi was Henry Barnston from 1900 to 1943, and then Rabbi Hammond Judah Schachtel became the rabbi. Hammond Judah Schachtel had been a founder of the council and had signed the Articles of Incorporation. So when he came in 1943, he implemented what were called the basic principles, which were pretty much in line with the principles of the American Council and based on the Pittsburgh Platform of 1885, the founding document of Reformed Judaism. In 1944, a group of around 150 families of the 800 families of the congregation split off and formed what became known as Emmanuel, and that became a a Reform Zionist congregation. So, and I went to Sunday school at Beth Israel. We learned Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. We learned do justice, love mercy, walk humbly with thy God, all the things that teach people how to live a good life and how to help make the world a better place. We also learned about the Sadducees and the Pharisees, and don't ask me any questions about that, please. In 1957, the congregation Beth Israel was presented with an option to transform its religious school practices to a curriculum that the American Council for Judaism established. They voted that down, and 26 families left the congregation and formed Houston Congregation for Reformed Judaism. 6 of those families had the same last name as I do. And we had a wonderful small congregation. We all knew each other, the adults, the children. We often didn't have a rabbi, so the families each week would take turns giving the sermon and leading the service. And it was a wonderful experience. And I was confirmed in that congregation. All 3 of those congregations still exist and are thriving congregations today, obviously with different modus operandi than they had back then. So I don't recall when I ever heard the word Zionism or anti-Zionism. We didn't talk about that. We were Americans of the Jewish faith. We weren't taught to be ugly to anybody or think we're better than anybody. We were just taught that's what we believe. Other people believe other things. So that's kind of my basic start in the process.
Okay. So some similarities there in terms of my upbringing and strong connection to Jewish values and treating people right. What does Judaism as a religion mean to you, coming from that kind of a place. The broader Jewish world was moving in a direction that you disagreed with, and how did that manifest for you in your own Judaism?
Well, I read an interesting article in the forward a week or so ago. A young woman said she carried her Judaism with her. And I thought that was very poignant. And that's the way I feel. I feel Judaism is a guide for me to how to live my life and to appreciate uh, nature, to appreciate other people, to try to make the world a better place. And I've I've been, except for when I was in college and excuse me, and uh, when I was in the military, I've been a member of a congregation pretty much all of my life until 2 years ago. So, um, yeah, I mean, I the things that I learned in religious school stayed with me, and I think have been a big part of my life.
So, how did you balance your personal sort of internal Jewish life or congregational Jewish life with your role as ACJ president? What was the relationship between those two experiences?
Well, I tried to keep a low profile. Uh,
Why is that?
I, well, uh, remember now, I didn't tell you this, but my wife was also raised conservative. So uh, I always felt I needed to balance, her positions, my positions. We have two daughters. So I've never hidden the fact that I was involved with the ACJ. I've always made it very clear to rabbis of the congregations that we belong to, and we belong to several because we moved around the country, what my positions were. Um, I guess one rabbi summed it up when he said, uh, if we joined his congregation, it would be the least objectionable congregation we would find. I'm not sure that was true, but as it turned out, it worked out until I decided not to re-up 2 years ago. Um, so, I've always gone. Uh, I'll give you a couple of examples. I went to early on, back in 2000, I guess. Um, I went to a rabbi. Our daughter was getting being bat mitzvahed, and I said, "Can we remove the flags from the pulpit?" And he said, "Well, where would you put them?" And I said, "Well, there's a closet behind the pulpit." Uh, and he said, "Okay." And so we put the flags in the closet, and as long as I was a member there, I never saw the flags again. They actually moved buildings, and the flags went from one closet to another closet. So it was very that was certainly exceptional, uh, and I've tried to make that same request other places where I haven't been so successful, and I never asked to have the flags put in the closet. I mean, he asked me where I wanted them, and that's what I told him. But I always thought that the flags shouldn't be in the sanctuary. If you put them in the foyer, if you're going to have flags, I don't like flags. I don't think we need flags. I don't agree with it, but I always thought they shouldn't be in the sanctuary because the sanctuary has a different purpose, and we shouldn't be worshiping even the American flag. Although the American flag does give us the right to be there and to have freedom of religion, but I never thought they should be in a sanctuary. So, but that was my one success in that endeavor.
I'm just going to interject and say I strongly agree with your position about the flags, and I would just like to take this moment to point out for anyone who believes that there's this enormous generational divide where younger people and older people can't come to a place of agreement about these sorts of things. I feel like everything Steve just said came out of my own brain. So, um, I just, yeah, it's been very meaningful to learn from Steve's example. Um, I want to ask you about 25 years of service to the ACJ. That is a long time. Did the meaning of the work for the ACJ shift over that period? And what does it feel like to look back at 25 years? Do we have any highlights or things that you wish you had done differently?
I guess I could say it's a relief. Uh, um, the I think I changed certainly over those 25 years, and so my perspective changed. And when I grew up, um, we were classical reform, and I call it Orthodox reform. Uh, you didn't wear a yarmulke, you didn't wear a tallis, you um, it was pretty much everybody was um, doing it all the same way, and it was pretty hard line. And I grew up that way, and I always felt that way for a long time. And then I realized I didn't really care whether somebody wore a yarmulke. It didn't matter to me. I cared more about what was under the yarmulke uh, than whether they wore it or not. And so uh, I mellowed, I guess you'd say, and moderated my positions on a lot of things. I've always had to um, just tolerate the changes in the service. The music never was the same. There used to be great music in classical reform. Um, then it just seemed like every week there were new songs and different songs, and with all due respect, camp songs, and so it was all changing. Uh, Reform Judaism was based on intellectualism, and all of a sudden, mysticism started coming back into religion, and Lahad D and facing the back of the door, the synagogue, and so all of these things just, um, I just had to kind of tolerate them. I always like I said, I'd always been a member, 47 years of adult life. I was dues paying, circle to giving, um, and I always felt like uh, I wanted to be a part of a congregation, but it was always me that had to make the uh, tolerate what was going on, I guess you'd say. Um, I guess some of the successes we created two fellowships during my tenure. One is at the American Jewish Archives in Cincinnati, and one is at the Jimmy and Rosalind Carter School for Peace and Conflict Resolution at George Mason University. And I think those are great things to maintain the posterity of the council. Also, our archives, a lot of our archives are at the American Jewish Archives. So I felt it was really important that we support their efforts. Early on, we we established a couple of programs. We tried to we queried all 900 Reform congregations to see if they had best practices for working with their classical Reform congregants. We found out most of them didn't, and that it was pretty much a demographic that was being left out. But We had hired a professional. We offered prizes. The first prize was $10,000. So we awarded those prizes for people that submitted their programs. And we also did matching grants for Union Prayer Book Sinai Edition, which is the updated Union Prayer Book. We did matching grants for those. And I thought that was a good program to help for classical reform. And in 2007, we spun off the Society for Classical Reform Judaism, and they became a separate entity. So I guess those are highlights. I wish we had been able to improve our communications. I'm not a social media person, so we never really got the word out as much as I wished we had. But it seemed like some young people found us in spite of that, and thank goodness. So I guess that's
We found each other.
yeah, we did. Thank goodness.
Yes, we're all very grateful. Steve, really, I was part of a group of people who were organizing to pressure the URJ to call for a ceasefire in December 2023, if you can believe that it's been that long. And, the theme of this talk being across generations, Steve emerged to tell us all where we had come from. And the legacy of the ACJ, I feel like for me, it appeared out of thin air as the thing that I had been looking for, the place in history that I hadn't seen yet, that made everything make sense in this moment that makes no sense. This moment where we're conflating anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism. There's a lot of noise. We're having a lot of trouble with understanding Jewish identity. How do we talk about this? How do we explain what we believe? Or Steve, how would you explain what you believe and your position to someone who's coming in with assumptions about anti-Zionism is the same as anti-Semitism, or people like us don't care about Jewish safety, coming from that kind of a place?
Well, as you know, when you and your colleagues approached me about coming on board with the council, I talked to each one of you individually, and I challenged you on why you wanted to do this. And because it was important to me that we move beyond the noise, that this is a long-term project and objective. And I wanted to make sure that everybody, not that everybody thought alike, but that everybody understood the history and understood what our objectives had been and were continuing to be. And anti-Zionism is a slippery slope. It is what anti-Zionism was back in 1940s and 50s is different now, because everybody has a different definition of what Zionism is to them. And so I get concerned when all we talk about is Zionism or anti-Zionism. And I really like what you and the board and Andy have come up with, which is Judaism beyond nationality, because it's a more positive perspective on Judaism as a religion. And I like the fact that I love classical reform. I was raised in it. It means different things to different people, of course, but it was always part of who I was. But I like the fact that we're reaching out now to all of reform, to actually to reconstructionists, to anybody who wants to really uh, be a Jew, practice Judaism, and beyond nationality. So I think it's, I think we really have a great program, and we're heading in the right direction. So uh, I'm awed by all of the people in your generation who have willingly stepped up to undertake this.
You made the place for us to step into. It is a two-way street. I'm wondering about how you and I come from very different places in terms of our reform upbringing. Yours is classical reform, Texas. I'm very much a Jew from the Northeast. I very much grew up in URJ specific Reform Judaism. Do you think that we arrive here with different kinds of commitment? Do you think we've arrived to the same place?
Um, well, I think we both have the same level of commitment. I think we just have, as you say, we've come at it from two very different perspectives. So, and like you said earlier, there is a lot of noise, um, and it's important to me to know that um, our Jewish moral and ethical values, to me, are at stake. Now, both sides of the equation claim rights to moral and ethical values, but obviously, one side is demonstrating um, that maybe they don't share them or look at them the same way, because what's going on now in terms of the treatment of the Palestinians, and has been going on for 50 years. It's not just since October 7th, but the slaughter, the genocide, um, the apartheid is, it's a terrible thing. It is a travesty to all Jews all around the world, and um, so it's important that people understand that, but it has to go beyond that. In other words, you have. I think that Israel is, to me, it's just another foreign country. It is not part of my Judaism. I don't know that everybody who's coming to the table now thinks that same way, but um, so it's important to understand. And I'm not saying they shouldn't be at the table. I'm saying we just need to understand and present a program that really focuses on Judaism as a religion, so that everybody can share in that. And I think that's really where we have to put our focus.
I think for me, that's where our little tagline of Judaism beyond nationalism really resonates because, at least in my experience, growing up inside of what I would call Zionist indoctrination, despite how other people in my life may feel about that, um, growing up inside of Zionist indoctrination is quite limiting. And the experience of Judaism as sort of conscripted to Zionism is very limited. And to me, that's where this beyond is so important. Judaism beyond nationalism, Judaism that is something more, because we know it is. It's the truth. I feel like Reform Judaism as practiced within the URJ has become so small. And Judaism has so much to offer that is not stuck within the confines of nationalism.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. The big tent is only big for the people that they let into it. And and it's really that's why I left. And like I say, I'd been a member of a congregation all of my adult life. And but when anti-Semitism uh, and anti-Zionism became equated, uh, I couldn't take it anymore. And I'd ask the rabbi to query the union and the CCAR as to how congregations should approach their congregants who had, in many cases, started these congregations, who had funded these congregations, whose families had been members for generations, how they were supposed to feel being called anti-Semitic and how they should be dealt with. And I got no response. So that's, that just, my brother told me, what took you so long?
I think a lot of us are asking ourselves that question, which brings me to this moment where more and more Jews, and particularly young Jews especially, are questioning the relationship that we've been presented between Judaism and Zionism, and the ACJ is being revitalized. What do you make of this moment? Does it feel like a vindication of some kind? And I also would love to know what you hope is possible for the next generation.
Well, I, like I say, I feel relief. I don't feel vindication. Um, I feel it was Bashir that we survived this long, got to this point. Um, there, and I hope people will come away from this conversation and try to learn more about the council and its history. There were some great people who's great rabbis, great lay people who founded this organization in 1942, who kept it going. And, I just happened to come along and, since I'd been brought up and this had all been a part of my life, that I just felt like I needed to try to keep it going. So I think that there can be uh, great things going on. I think there are so many people out there that are looking for a home, that are looking for a space, that need to know that we're there, that other people are out there for them. Individuals, Havara, discussion groups, even now there's non-Zionist, anti-Zionist congregations. We need to be there for those people, and it's your generation that is going to have to carry the ball. I started to say carry the flag, but we don't want to carry the flag. So, so I think this is really it's the right time. I feel, I feel pain that that this moment had to come because of the loss of life of so many people, and the ill will and the ill treatment of a whole group of people. I just it's just so un-Jewish to me that it has that this is what has brought us to this moment. But be that as it may, I mean, we're here, and I think there's a growing population that needs us, and thank goodness for mainstream that doesn't see it, because they keep citing these low demographics, only 6%, 7% of the people feel this way, but they're all young people. Not all, but many of them are young people, and that's the future of Judaism. So I think we're on the right path. It's going to be a hard road. Need a lot of money. Need a lot of work.
It's a big shift. So, if you could say one thing to a Jewish person who is just at the very beginning of questioning the relationship between their Jewish identity and Jewish nationalism, what would you say?
I would say challenge yourself to get out of the box, whatever box you're in. Try to learn and explore, investigate from as many sources as you can. Some of those, sometimes I'm listening to YouTube or reading an article, and somebody will ask me a question. Well, they don't agree with you. Why are you listening to that? But that's how you learn, and that's how you test your own thinking. That's how you challenge yourself to find out what you really believe. And I'll go back to yarmulke. Sometimes I would ask somebody, "Why do you wear a yarmulke?" And the best answer I ever heard was, "Because my wife told me to." So I understood that. But people would say, "Oh, it's in the Torah." Well, I would say, "I don't think it is. You should ask the rabbi." So, and that's just a simple thing, but people need to really explore. And I'm going to cite a couple of things that I heard, listened to in the last year that really struck me. There's a fellow by the name of Peter Beinart, and he interviewed Avram Berg, who was the former Speaker of the Knesset. And it is an incredible interview that where Avram Berg really calls into question the ethics and the morality of Israel. And he's an Israeli, obviously. And I just thought that, and I'm sure he's a Zionist. I don't know if he calls himself a Zionist, but in another interview that Peter Beinart did was with Rabbi Ismar Skorch, and he was the head of the Jewish Theological Seminary for 20 years. He's the Chancellor Emeritus. And what he said was that the Jewish religion is at stake. For what is going on now is going to determine the fate of Judaism. And it is an incredible interview coming from a rabbi, a Zionist, a vowed Zionist, who is really calling into question everything that's going on within Judaism, and why people aren't speaking out, and why mainstream, the union, the CCAR, the Hebrew Union College, aren't speaking out. And then on your generation, and I'm sure that you saw this Simone Zimmerman interview with Hannah Einbinder, and that was also incredible. So people need to go out there and explore. If you come to the same conclusion, that fine, but at least you understand why. Okay, and if you and don't be afraid to change your mind. Don't be afraid to evolve. And I think I think your generation has it right. So,
Thank you. And I want to add, if you're one of those people who is at the beginning of that line of questioning and you want help figuring it out, you want to talk about it with other people, you want to hold someone's hand while you do a little of that exploring, the ACJ is a great group to be connected with. I myself am happy to have that conversation. I know several of our other board members are too. And I think we're about ready to open it up to questions from listeners, which could be to either of us or both of us. And I think Andy's going to help us get that sorted out.
I am indeed. If you would like to ask a question, you can, like Jessica has, put your hand up virtually, or I've made it so you can now turn your video on. So if you want to ask a question, you can just turn your video on and then you'll pop up. And I ask, as I do at any event that I am holding this role in, is to please remember this is a Q&A. A lot of the times there is a deep desire to share a lot and then maybe end with a question. And I'll ask that anyone who comes off mute go straight to the question. Thank you.
Hi, how are you?
Hi.
Hi, I have a question for both of you. So Sam, I think my son, I think, went to Eisner with you and your brother, and everything you said, he resonates with Noah Brockman. He might even have been involved in some of the work you have happened over the years addressing the URJ and all that. And I, as a supportive parent, like I'm a rabbi too, and I love Israel and I love being there. But as a supportive parent, I'll read whatever he asks me to read and watch whatever he asks me to watch. And there's a great book called Someday Everyone Will Have Been Against This that I actually recommended to him. And so, like, I try and be a supportive parent. And on the same side, he's in graduate school and he's finding there's a lot of incredible art and literature, especially in early anti-Zionism in Israel. Like, there's a whole Canaanist movement and that. So, I guess, like, navigating as a parent or a family member where, like, how can, like, because I love him so much, want to show the support, and listen to him, but also that there is a history. I was a tour guide in Israel. So, like, there is a really interesting history about anti-Zionism and Jews grappling with that. That's beautiful. And then, Steve, for you, like, kudos to you for, like, I couldn't even believe this was the same organization that I knew from Charlotte in the 90s, because, like, when rabbinical school students and Jews in the South, where I was, heard about the American Council for Judaism, it was much more about the amount of Hebrew in the service than really anything about Israel and Zionism. And so I'm really curious, like, you addressed it a little, but in the interim and in the future, like, what can happen that, like, someone like my son can find, like, a real place? And then for both of you, like, are there places where, like, we can enjoy being together? Because, like, here's the thing, like, I want to pray with my kids and I want to go to Israel, and Noah actually has gone, and like, we talk about Israel a lot, but, like, I don't want it to be like something that only divides us. So, like, how do we address that gray space? So you guys can
Great.
address it however you want, but
Thank you, Jessica.
yeah.
well, I'll start, if that's all right.
Great.
So I remember you, Jessica, from Charlotte, because I was there. And first off, kudos to you for having a relationship with your son and talking about it, because people shouldn't lose their friends or their family. I mean, they're going to lose some because there are always going to be hardliners on both sides. but it really, people need to be able to talk about it and just explore and realize that you might not agree on every aspect of it, but try to find the common ground. So I, I, I appreciate as a parent and a grandparent, I appreciate the fact that you're having that dialogue. So, um, and yeah, the council, classical reform was not big on Hebrew, and I flunked it twice, but I flunked Spanish 4 times and didn't do so well in English. So I think it was genetic and uh, not part of the council's training. But Judaism has changed, and we have to reach out to people that are coming at it from all different approaches, and share the positives of Judaism, the moral and ethical values, and not only talk about them, but we have to live them, and we have to make the world try to understand, and that this is, if we're going to survive as a civilization, we have to all try to promote those values. I turn it to Sam.
Yeah, so I think the question inside of what you shared is like, how can we be Jewish together? How can we find a path forward in these relationships where we maybe are coming from very different positions? And I also would like to commend you on listening to your kid and reading the things your kid sends you. And that's, as someone's anti-Zionist child, that's really all we want. We want you to engage. We want you to remember that we're the people you raised to have Jewish values. And in most cases, this position that we're taking that for some reason seems like it's not very Jewish, it's actually the most Jewish position there is. And that's often the place we're coming from. In terms of being Jewish together, I think it's different for everyone. I don't see myself returning to Israel despite having spent time there in the past with my family, but there are ways that I feel I can be Jewish with people in my family. My mom, who is on this Zoom, hi mom, has accompanied me to a Seder with beloved friends of mine who are very attuned to the reality of what's going on in the Middle East. And we got to be Jewish together. We found a way. We were able to not be 100% on the same page and get there. There are also challenges. I am not interested in praying in environments that have flags. I'm not interested in praying to a symbol of empire. I Part of the reason that I'm involved in the ACJ at all to begin with is because I really want Jewish spaces that are not attending to nationalism before they are attending to Jewish values and religion. And I think the answer is I don't necessarily know yet. I wonder about this a lot, especially as someone who lives, I'm 28, I live rurally, I don't belong to a congregation. I want to say Kaddish for my father. Where do I do that? And the answer is I don't know yet, but I would like to work really hard so that there's a place that people like me can join like-minded folks to have our shared spiritual connection. So I hope that that answers your question a little bit, but the answer is there's more to come and there's a lot of work to do, and we're doing it.
Great. Thank you all. David, you have been waiting very patiently and the longest.
Hi, thanks for having Andy. Maybe, yeah. So I'm of the older generation. Obviously, I've had the opportunity to meet Rabbi Andy online and also Steve online. Thank them both for their leadership and Sam now for yours. So I have a much more attenuated or tenuous relationship with the council, but I'm old enough and lucky enough to have attended a council Sunday school for a year or two back in the mid to late 1950s, right? Before the split was quite as bad as it quickly became. Um, I think my question is more for Sam and the younger generation, because I think Steve and I are lucky enough to be able to remember a time when the conversation really was mostly about being an American, not even, no, I take it back, just being a person of the Jewish faith, or even being a person with some kind of Jewish identity, and when the conversation wasn't as much about Zionism and anti-Zionism. And I think that's kind of for the younger, well, like I say, Steve and I can remember that time, but for the younger generation, that might seem like a distant hope,
Yeah.
with the urgency of anti-Zionism being as urgent as it is. So, but I, I guess I would generationally speaking, I would share Steve's hope that we'd get back to that conversation about just being a person with a Jewish identity, a person of the Jewish faith. Wonder how the younger leadership feels about that as an aspiration.
Thanks, David.
Yeah, so something for me that emerged in 2023, particularly in these conversations with the URJ leadership seeking to get to a place where we could just even ask for a ceasefire, our position was very much a fundamentally anti-war position. We happened to all be Jews. We happened in that organizing group to all be Reform Jews, many of us children of Reform rabbis and people who were involved in leadership in the URJ. So we felt that it was our responsibility to speak to this organization that raised us. And I'm with you. I just want to be I'm anti-war, I'm anti-violence. Like I just I want to be a person. I want to be a good person. I want to be a Jewish person. I'm right there with you. And I think there are a lot of people who are seeking both a spiritual home, a religious community, and a reality where we get to just be a Jew. There are a lot of people who want to be Jewish. We don't want to be having this other conversation. And we've been forced to be having this conversation because our values dictate that we absolutely have to say something. And yeah, I'm not sure how it happens or when it happens. I think we're the moment that we've come to where we're not, fighting our way to get into that big tent anymore, and instead we're building our own. I think that's part of how we get there. And I'm hopeful. I working with the ACJ makes me hopeful. It's it's the best I can do. I can't promise for the next generation, but we're trying.
Thanks, Sam. Steve, did you want to share anything with regard to that question too?
Well, I did want to tell David that I apologize and that I owe him a telephone conversation. So, no, Sam answered it quite well.
Thanks, Steve. Lauren, I'm going to ask you to unmute if you still have a question.
Yes. As an ethical universalist, I oppose all forms of ethnic nationalism, which includes Zionism. My question is, as we start to build anti-Zionist Jewish spaces, sometimes I've found that they can kind of get into some forms of Palestinian nationalism. Sometimes I just want a Hanukkah party, not a Hanukkah party for Palestine, or a Passover Seder, and not a Passover Seder for Palestine. And I understand that's a reaction to the mainstream. So how do we build Jewish spaces that, while standing for the human rights of the Palestinian people, really try to move past nationalism in the other direction?
Excellent question.
Come to the right place.
Yeah.
I can tell you that is a conversation we've been having throughout this whole process.
Right.
And I think it's another one of those situations where the answer is still developing, but I'm right there with you. That's why we're saying Judaism beyond nationalism. That's why, you know, we're talking about the American flag too. It's in the conversation. Rabbi Andy might be more able to speak to this question than me.
Steve, did you want to share any thoughts
Well,
first?
as I said, I'm not smart enough to have figured all of this out, but and I'm a veteran, and so I take great pride even in this day and age of being an American and in the American flag. But this was all brought to light to me. It was a first. It was a eye-opening conversation that we've had. Actually, several conversations that we've had about nationalism, and I'm starting to get it. And I think you know, Andy said it right. It's a great question, and it's sometimes difficult to make these splits between trying to support the Palestinians or other national groups uh, uh, in a context that doesn't involve our Judaism, but it's something that has to be certainly has to be thought about and addressed.
I'm going to try to give my very quick answer, which is that, at least for me, in my upbringing, and I think in a lot of people who grew up in Reform and even some conservative synagogues where they maybe didn't go to day school or anything like that, very few people have the skills to actually practice a rich Judaism that is just based in what you're describing and like being Jewish together without that added layer of what in the institutions is Zionism. And then when they attempt to build community outside, they, because it's what's familiar, because it's what has structured their Judaism through the institutions they grew up in, they feel the need to replace that aspect as well with by centering pro-Palestinian solidarity. I think that as Jews, for many reasons, pro-Palestinian solidarity is incredibly important, both from just basic values, like we should be speaking up against any kind of genocide that's happening. We should be speaking up on behalf of any group that's being persecuted. But then obviously there's the added layer of a state that claims to represent all Jews doing the persecution and genocide, which I think makes people really want to figure out how to shake that off. And the way they feel they need to do that is by centering Palestinian solidarity in place of the Zionism. And I think for people, if that's the community they want to build, that's the community they should build, and great. But one of the things that we are working on right now in developing is helping to provide resources and skills and lower the boundary for entry to all kinds of Jewish practice for people that want to construct the kind of life that you're describing, Lauren, because so many people came up through these institutions where the institutions did Judaism for them. They didn't really have to do anything themselves. And the institutions conflated Zionism with Judaism. And so they don't know how to fully decouple all of that stuff. And so we are working on that. We have a affiliate network that we're beginning to build of Havarot all over the country. And hopefully coming out of that will be toolkits and ways to create exactly the kind of communities you're describing, Lauren. Richard.
Hello. It occurred to me to also like in terms of finding spiritual, there's a consortium of anti-science synagogues that is calling itself Synagogues Arising. But my question was, how are y'all doing on social media? Seems like that's sort of the future in terms of reaching that younger generation. What do y'all got going on?
I can tell you that I have the great pleasure of being Rabbi Andy's speedy copy editor, and we're very active on Instagram. We're very active on social media. We have a whole new look that Steve, I think, is now on board with, despite his attachment to the prior ACJ website. We're there. A lot of us on the board are in our late 20s or in our 30s, and that's the language we speak, and we understand that that's the language that needs to be spoken at this moment in order to reach people who are seeking community. So follow us on Instagram and look at our new website at acjna.org.
Yeah, I echo what Sam just said, and I think that social media is super fraught right now. It's actually really hard to figure out how to use it in a way that is both effective for our messaging and gets the word out, but without replicating some of the problems that come when you try to build something via social media, which requires doing things to get attention that are inflammatory, that will get the clicks and the anger and the like, and we don't want to do that, right? Like, and so our Instagram's doing well. We've got all these videos on YouTube of all this will be up there shortly too. And slowly but surely, hopefully, people will more and more discover us through it. Thanks, Richard. Eden.
Hey all. Thank you for having this, Sam. It's good to see you. Good to see you all. And yeah, I mean, I just wanted to echo the finding the ACJ and other histories to lean back on. It was for myself such a good off-ramp that I didn't have to I mean, it took a while to find, but I didn't have to build from scratch. There's a history to build upon and to learn from, and people still doing this work. So I really appreciate everything that you're doing. I guess I just wanted to ask, given that history, what's your vision for the ACJ in 10 years? No restrictions, what would you like to see happen within the next decade or two?
I can answer that, and I think Steve should answer that too. What's my personal vision or what's the organization's vision? I think Andy should speak to the organization's vision, but my personal vision is basically, it comes down to what I said before. I want to have somewhere or someone or some container where I can be a Jew, where I can experience my Jewish ritual tradition. I want to share that with other people, and I want to share that with other people who are not interested in supporting violent nationalism. I think that looks like creating small communities. I think that looks like disseminating educational resources. It looks like learning together. It looks like this on Zoom and on YouTube because that's the world we live in. And maybe it looks like we're all in a sukkah in person and we're still learning, but there are lots of ways to be together. And that's what I hope for, at least, is to be Jewish together. It's not much, and it's also everything.
I'm gonna have to cop out on this. I'm just hopeful I'll be alive in 10 years. So it's 79 now, but it's a young person's game now. And no disrespect to my fellow travelers of my generation and even the next younger generations. I think that the vehicles to reach out to people and to give them the products that they need, the tools they need to live their Judaism, they're all beyond my comprehension. Like I said, I don't do social media. I was barely able to keep the website going, and they even made me change the logo. So what can I say?
Yeah, I want to just echo what Sam said. I think it's what we're doing it already, and that in 10 years it'll just be very stable, right? Like we will have institutional stability, wide recognition as a place for folks to go who are looking to build community, and that it'll be seen as like a normative mode of American Judaism to be, you know, building Judaism where you are with the values espoused by the ACJ and the tools that we're working to provide for folks to do that.
Andy,
Yeah.
I want to go back to Lauren and tell her that the reason they made me take the logo off was because it was nationalistic. So I want her to know we've made a big step in that direction. So
It's true. The logo when we restarted this was a menorah with the American flag in it.
right.
But we got
Sorry,
Steve
Steve.
a t-shirt for his beloved logo.
Yeah.
The justice to Steve's attachment to the logo.
Yeah. I think we've got one last question from Alex.
All right, y'all can hear me now, right? I'm sorry, my lighting's not the best at the moment. But my question is more about the reform movement in particular, especially as it relates to the URJ. Because I've been leading an independent minion. We just had our second service about a week ago. Our next one's going to be in a month. And the other day, me and some of the organizers were drafting our public facing value statement. And one of the things we got caught up on was the fact that even though, like in a moment-to-moment basis in our services, it really is like a lot of inspiration from the reform movement because most of us grew up reform. There's lots of like Debbie Friedman renditions of prayers. And we're, super like egalitarian about everything. And a vast majority of us are not all that halachically observant. But we couldn't really bring ourselves to use the word reform for it because we wanted to avoid any association with the URJ, mostly for political reasons, which have been expanded upon pretty well by now by other people. And so ultimately, we wound up just calling it a progressive liturgy. So my question is, in this newer moment of independent congregations sprouting up, in cases where there is like a similar liturgy to what's done in the Reform movement, do you think that label would be able to transcend whatever the URJ happens to espouse? And is there a way around any type of political connotation with it?
That is such a great question. And my answer is aspirational and personal in that my father was a Reform rabbi. I grew up as a Reform Jew. I feel very strongly that I am a Reform Jew. In much the same way that I was born in this country and I grew up in this country and I'm American, I'm not on board with what the government's up to. I'm a Reform Jew and I'm not on board with what the URJ is doing. So I share that concern. I totally agree that in this moment, it is so hard to get your message across with the specificity that you want to have, where you want to say reform, but you don't want to say URJ. You want to make sure that the person who's coming to maybe join your minyan understands what you're about and that they don't run in the other direction because they think Debbie Friedman means Zionism. So the answer again is I'm hopeful. That keeps being my answer. It took a lot of work to be hopeful. It's been a couple years of working really hard. The activist and writer Mariam Kaba says hope is a discipline. This has been a very disciplined process of becoming hopeful. And I want to believe that the work that the ACJ and the people we're connected to are doing is going to make it possible that we can say that we're Reform Jews, and that can mean something, again, this word beyond, it can mean something beyond nationalism. So it's the answer is yes and no. And the answer is we keep trying and we keep untangling the same knot until we arrive at a shared understanding. And I hope that day comes soon.
I think kudos for working on your minion. I think that's wonderful. And, you know, we may have things to offer you and you have things to offer us. So we should all be, in this day and age, we all need to work together to show a force behind this movement and all and what's going on. So help us, and I think we can help you.
And Alex and his amazing minion in Westchester are already part of what we're working on. So I'm going to just say a little bit on this because it's like a major thing for me, because I love Reform Judaism and I love the thought of the early reformers and the ideology that came out of the Hasfalah, Jewish Enlightenment, and it is really hard because when like 90% of the time, if you say I reform to someone, they think that you are J, which is fine. But I do think that we are also at a moment that even before this this major rupture that's occurring, we were already on our way out of the denominational mode of Judaism in America anyway. And so to me, I don't know that the word is super important, but the values that you're already putting out there, Alex, and the traditions that you're maintaining by even continuing to include Debbie Friedman in the liturgy, is what's more important than actually calling it reform. The problem is, and this is something that we have struggled with for literally years now, is like if we don't call it reform, what are we calling it? And I think that progressive liturgy is as good as anything else. Yeah, it's a great question. I'm really glad you raised it. Steve and Sam, thank you both so much for not just this, for all you do, all you have done, and all you will continue to do for the ACJ. Steve is President Emeritus, but we still meet with him constantly, and he's still super involved and still does a ton for us, and it's amazing. And so I'm very, very grateful to both of you for making this possible and for being here tonight and having this really beautiful, candid, open conversation. I hope those of you who watched enjoyed, took something away from it. If you are so inclined and inspired, there is a link in the chat if you would like to help support us. The current president would be very mad if I didn't say that, so I had to say it. And we will be doing another similar conversation next month. Keep an eye out for when that will be announced in the next couple weeks. We also have some really good programming coming up. Intro to Judaism Beyond Nationalism, a 16-week program about what does it mean to be building Judaism beyond nationalism. And we have a wonderful class coming up with Rabbi Abigail Alpern, who's a graduate of Hadar, about the meaning of halakha, that it's not just Jewish law, it's something significantly bigger than that. So keep an eye on our Instagram, American Council for Judaism, or our webpage, acjna.org. Thank you all so much for being here. Have a wonderful night, and this in Pesach.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you, Steve, for everything, not just for the last hour.
Y'all stay well.